Opposing Gloves here, and today we're talking about breaks in drum and bass. This is like where drum and bass came from, so it's kind of an important topic to talk about. Now we're going to be looking at processing breaks and stuff like that later, but first you need to get your head around what a break is, where it comes from, and we're going to be doing, there'll be two. In this one we're going to be looking at samples as breaks, and in another one we will be looking at creating breaks from, one-shot samples, creating your own breaks, your rhythmic breaks. So there's a variety of options you have when working with breaks, but first let's just pull down the idea of what a break is. So first I'm going to play for you a bunch of breaks. And so one thing you'll notice is that they share a very consistent sort of rhythm, and the crazier ones obviously are not so like, there are variations on breaks. There's tons of different kinds of breaks. So here are just a couple. So you'll notice right off the bat that we have this dun dun, like some sort of doom and then a dun dun later on. That's a pretty common thing. I mean, like there might be a break out there that does this, but it's typically, it just doesn't fit in the genre. One that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, like do. You don't hear that unless it's maybe like a break of a break. You know what I'm saying? It's not the main rhythm though in drum and bass. So what's the concepts of breaks? So in case you don't know, the way this came about was the almond break really was the one that started this whole thing. So I have a little pack here of some of them. That's a variation on the almond break. So that's pretty cool, right? So you have all these different breaks. This is the break that sort of started it all. But if you remember back from the history, they found out drummers will fill in a spot in the song, and it was called the drum break. And so it became known as breaks, where they sort of do a solo. And then they would take them, sample them, and speed them up, slow them down, do all these things, and you would get, this kind of a thing. So that is pretty cool. Now, where did I get these samples? You're probably wondering that. I got them from Rhythm Lab. They are super dope. Now, they have stuff on here that's for free and stuff that's not for free. And their About page, though, it talks about how, with the exception of a couple of them, they're all royalty free. Pretty cool. Or is it the FAQ? It's the FAQ page that talks about that. You can use all samples here wherever you want and however you'd like. So here is a great place to get them. There are other places, but because there's like a number of places I don't just look here, but you go through their bundles and stuff. And what's neat is they are sampled chopped, so I could change my tempo. So let's come over here and watch this. So I could like come in here. You'll see there's Breakz files, and these are made so you see the tempo that they're originally at, but these are made to work at any tempo. So I'm like at 172 right now. You drop it in, and you see these little lines right here. REX files have this in them where they save the slice markers, so you can just drag and drop them into your session and they will automatically chop. When you export anything out of FL, you have an option to do this if you so desire. So here it sounds slow, but here is it all sort of put back together. So pretty cool. Now we're going to get into again processing later, but I want to look at some of the things about this. So you'll see that another thing that's nice about this is there are wave files, and then there are the REX files in case you want to like move the tempo around. So they do a lot of processing to this. It's kind of crazy. As we get farther and farther into this, you'll see different styles of the way things can be done. You may choose to do things differently. A lot of this comes down to like mixing and stuff. My hand has like a big cut in it, and so it's at that stage where it's like kind of scabbed over, but it's like itchy. It's like, oh my gosh, man, it's friggin' annoying. Now some of these you'll see they don't have them from the Rhythm Lab, but if you drop them on, they have them already. Like they'll already conform. They just don't have the markers clearly shown. That's another thing you can do because they can be embedded in WAV files. I have a ton of other things that I found though but they are not so nice. So what do you do when you get something like this? Well, you simply cut it up, And so you just do something like this, you cut it up, and you move them according to where you want it. And it might take longer, but if it's the break you want to use, then it's worth it. And I think that doing something like that is valuable because you see exactly how the break is constructed, where the kick and the snare hit and where all that stuff is. Now, you're going to be working, when you're working with samples, generally with things that have already been sort of chopped up. So what are some things you can do to sort of make an interesting drum rhythm? Well, let's pick a different one. Here we go. So this one has a heavy kick pattern, but something you may consider doing when processing samples like this is you may consider making multiple versions and making one unique, and then sending this to a different track. Now, if you're curious about how to navigate in FL, that is something I will not be. I have series for that, like how to make your first song in FL and stuff like that. And I have series for all these effects and stuff. So I'm not going to be explaining a lot of that stuff. So if you're here for that kind of a thing, I've got entire other series for that. So just go look up stuff. It's probably on my channel. I've got a lot of videos at this point, and they're not going to slow down. Anyways, back to my point. Like, let's say that you want this one to be mostly your kick and you want this one to be mostly your hat. You could come in here and maybe you use a multi-band compressor. I'll go ahead and just use an EQ for this. And so let's say this is my kick one, right? So what I'm going to do is try and EQ out some of the other So I'm taking that. That's what that sounds like, okay? And then on this one, we'll go ahead and get rid of all the low stuff and try and isolate our highs. That way we can process them differently. You may use Maximus to do things like similar to this. And you could get at things sort of in a cooler sort of way. Now, there are other ways. For example, there's a cool plugin called Gross Beat. And if you want to do things separate, like in a single thing like this, turn that off. What you could do is you could add Gross Beat to it. And what I do sometimes is I will automate this thing. I may automate the gate too. So this could get pretty out of hand. So you got to sort of use it wisely, but you automate the time, the way it stretches time. And it only matters what the automation clip is at the beginning. And you could come in here and figure out what one it triggered. Like it triggered, what is it? It's complex 3. And so on complex 3, it does this little at the end. And that's kind of, if you listen to old stuff done with FL Studios, they did not hide these sorts of effects. And I used to use them all the time in my rips to be a little more subtle so that people don't know that you're using Gross Beat. Because sometimes you kind of want to be secretive about what you're using. You can just simply get rid of this, and then it will sound that at the end will go away. See, and it sort of just chops it up for us. So it's kind of cool. That's a way to mess with that. Now we're using this on a thing with kick and snare and all that stuff. If we separated them out, we could do that just to the high part, and we could add some really interesting counter rhythms to it. So among sample things, you also have additional option like pitching and stuff. You'll see a lot more of that in breakcore. But again, we're just taking drum loops and speeding them up to tempo. Now, what if, let's do one that's doesn't have this nice feature of the stretching. So I have some of these. Let's see, there's that one. So let's say that this is the one I want, but it's all like kind of wonky. So what I'm going to do is, now this is for FL specifically, but I'm sure in your DAW you can find ways to increase your workflow. I have something, if you hit F10 on your keyboard, it'll bring up some options here in the, file setting right here, the general setting. They have click and hold and special gestures function, which is a reference to a multi thing. So turn that on if you're curious to really start speeding up your workflow. And there's something cool that I like to do when I'm working with a thing like this. So what I first off, you hold Alt to change your snap setting automatically to off the grid. So I'm going to hold down Alt and move this up to the beginning. And then I'm going to hold Alt and click and drag this. In the recent update, they changed how the shift thing moved as well, how some of the things it works as a workflow style. At least I think they did. It didn't do some of the things before that it does now, but that's like a different topic, but it will come up later as just a workflow thing. Now, I want to now get to a slice setting to do this. There are two ways I can do it. Well, there's like 4 or 5 different ways. Yeah, so you could come over here, you could click the slice. I could I could click my middle mouse button and then, what is that? Right click, left click. What is this? My left and left click. So middle mouse, left click, and it brings up the same menu. So I don't have to come up here. That's cool too. That's fast. However, there's an even better way that I personally like. If you click and hold and don't move your mouse, it automatically brings it up. Hold down Alt, it'll take it off the grid, and you can simply click, hold down Alt, move it over, and just make a small adjustment. And so I'm just going to keep doing that here and just move it over. It doesn't matter if the audio clips over a line. So again, I'm just holding down Alt. So I right click, hold down Alt to chop it right where I want it. Alt click again to move the clip. And you may have to practice a little bit at getting your rhythm down with the buttons, because you may end up pressing, just wrong buttons for a little bit. But this is a this is a great way to work. So if you do move your mouse though while you're holding down the button, it won't hold down properly. So just so you know, it won't go to the function. So, but yeah, this is really cool. Really cool. As far as I know, I haven't seen anyone else really take advantage of some of these things, at least as a tutorialist. But there are lots of good tutorials out there for stuff like how to do things. But yeah, just haven't seen this. I've seen other tricks that are really cool. So this is like one of the glove insider tricks. You may prefer to do the whole, occasionally I'll go here, but it's usually so I can get to this thing instead. But yeah. You notice now when I'm doing stuff like this, I do not worry too much about I do not worry very much about the hi-hat landing. You may care more, but you also get a way better feel for what things look like. Like you could see that there's a lot of high content in this. If you want to increase your zoom setting, like let's say you can't zoom in as far as you'd like, there's one way to do it. This is pretty much true in all DAWs. They should have it somewhere. You have time-based pulse per quarter note. So a pulse is, they have these things called clicks. Anyways, every beat has a certain amount of pulses in them that determine the smallest movement you can have when it is off. And right now, the DAW standard usually is about 960, which FL conforms to. So now you see we zoom in a lot farther. This may or may not be a burden. It does increase CPU usage. So just, use it wisely. It may be something you want. Sometimes if you're going for really small delay effects, it could be useful. But as far as what we were doing earlier, it was rather unnecessary. And another thing to keep in mind is your pulse per quarter note, if it's 960 per beat, you actually get a lot more pulses per quarter note at a higher tempo, because quarter notes are a lot smaller. So on the slower tempo, you actually have less, you're able to be less accurate with where you place things. It's kind of a weird deal. But yeah, I first learned about it when I was working with Digital Performer. So it's kind of cool. I have an instructor that's like his DAW. It's like what he likes, and good for him. It's not my DAW. He can have it all he wants. I quite enjoy Ableton. Ableton's pretty cool. I'm gonna leave that one alone. That one looked pretty close already. These all look pretty darn close, but if you want it to be really spot on, you're going to end up doing something like this. Something that's kind of cool too is you can make these things unique and process them separately, which is something we'll look at doing in just a sec, but it'll be more in detail when we write it out rhythmically later. Some of this stuff that I'm doing too, you will have to, this is a long break. This is a full 4 bars or something. You'll have to practice rhythmic writing. Some of this stuff is just stuff that you have to learn what transition you kind of want to do. Some people skip through this stuff, but hey, man, now you know what it kind of takes to get a really solid break. So you see it ends right there. Oh, it's 8 bars. No wonder. So now it's perfectly in time with our stuff. Now, if we grab some other stuff that does have the enabled ability, it should line up quite nicely. And what you could do is you could come through here, maybe take out a couple, put it in right there to vary up like the end of the measure or something. Create a consistent thing that the listener expects. And then at the very end. Now I'm gonna go to this thing and move it over and just sort of be like, oh man, at the end of that one, something different happened. And so that keeps interest. And now this one's done. This isn't the best exact break I would select for this kind of thing. So yeah, that's not a great example. So see, I wouldn't settle with that, but whatever, you get the idea. So we have these break things are going through. There was one other thing I was going to do after moving them together. There was, you can put delay, EQ, make them unique. Again, stuff that'll pop up later with samples. Oh yeah, okay, so single sample stuff. So let's say you're listening to a break. And there's something you like in that break. Like maybe you like the kick of a particular break, or you like the snare of a break more with another one. There are plugins that'll actually let you swap them out, but I'm sort of a do-it-yourself kind of guy. Like, I think it's kind of fun to go through and pick out. Maybe there's, well, that one wasn't. Let's go up here. Let's say I really like that bow sample I got going on right there. So what I'll do instead is I will come up here and you just solo it. So you just go do 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 do. Oh yeah. Move it over. Go like this. Let's say I don't want that thing on the end. And that's pretty cool. I hit make unique as sample and put yes, and I put like some sort of hit or whatever with all my cap locks is on. And now I have this and I can go ahead and really sort of use the sampler inside FL to get a little more specific. And then I could write out, I've essentially taken out that one piece so I can write out my own break later, which we will look at probably in the next video. If you have any questions about samples, how this works, hopefully you've got like a pretty clear idea what breaks are. I've given you a really, I'm not gonna lie, that website was gold mine right there. What I found, I was like, what? I was like, what? So you could go look for the packs. I downloaded only a couple of them: down tempo breaks, almond breaks, drum loops. So yeah, I've only got 3. A lot of these others I found other places on the web. Using these is sort of like kind of sketch. You want to be careful about where you download stuff. I generally look for somewhere that says royalty free or something that it's been recorded. But in the end, you're going to be processing and doing all this junk, and these things are so darn common that it's not like, this is weird. This sort of thing is just a mess. Copyright is a terrible, terrible mess. So if you have any questions about any of these things, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day. No, I'm talking about like this type of a sound. And you could also try moving the filter with it.